through an activation, isn't it? So a spiritual exercise wouldn't be like somebody telling you like 100 times Allah created you, or Allah is there, or you have to look at how Allah created you. It's usually kind of getting in touch with our spirit. So for example, we'll pray salah, and we'll actually connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does that make sense? Or maybe you'll look at the creation of Allah and try and figure out how Allah's created the world. So the thing which sometimes becomes the obstacle is, number one, knowing. So I think we've probably done this every day so far. Knowing becomes a big problem. So because all of us, alhamdulillah, already are at some point in our spiritual journey. So we all already have some awareness of Allah, and we know where our taqwa is, we know where our tawakkul is. But at the same time, there's that chance to move forward. Yeah? Everyone following? So then now, when we use that, for example, that speedometer, the MIQ, for example, these help us get around this problem of knowing. There's everyone following? So everything that we've done for the 7 days has been to try and deal with these two problems. Number one, when we know something, we have a problem learning more about it. So we mentioned this quite deeply yesterday. What's the front end of learning? What's the front end of getting rid of this problem of knowing? What's the quality that we need to build? People. Curiosity, good. So now from knowing, we try and get to curiosity, to try and kind of not knowing 100%. We know some, but we don't know everything. And how do you cultivate curiosity? People. Good. But more specifically, yesterday we went there's something which causes curiosity to come up a lot quicker. Come on, man. Questions. So that's why I think questions have been very, very important. As opposed to in the physical world, we want lots of answers, don't we? Usually. And this is why this becomes a bit confusing, because instead of giving you lots of information and telling you what the answers are, here we're going more into the questions and actually finding out more, going a bit deeper. And very often that's what we kind of miss. So we had, for example, for Taqwa, we had MIQ. What does MIQ stand for? Most important questions. So for every spiritual exercise we have MIQ, and when you bring those questions there, that gets rid a bit of the knowing side of it and allows you to go a little bit deeper into what's going on. So for example, for Taqwa, we had the 3 MIQ, which apply to all spiritual exercises. So for example, for Taqwa, we had what is Taqwa? How is my Taqwa? And how do I want to improve my Taqwa? Where do I want my Taqwa to be? That was simple 3 questions for Taqwa. And then yesterday we had what we called empowering questions, which we'll come on to in a minute. We'll come on to yesterday's slide in a minute just to recap that. But the way we got around this problem of knowing was to ask these questions. And then we asked what is Taqwa, and we answered what is Taqwa a little bit. And that helped us get more in touch with how we can improve our Taqwa. Yeah, so that's number 1, knowing. Then we have being busy. This comes as a result of number 1. Yeah, so when you know what you're meant to be doing, very often you'll end up kind of being busy because you're doing things based on the knowledge that you have, based on what you think that you're meant to be doing. Whereas sometimes it's not about just doing something, it's about learning what you should be doing. It's about actually taking a step to make a schedule and to figure what you're meant to be doing out. Does that make sense? And I want everyone to be able to follow this from the beginning. So rather than kind of going off track, I want this to actually be an implementation. So from day 1 through to day 7, we get an awareness of what kind of journey we had. So if you notice, these are the 2 obstacles, knowing and being busy. Knowing is more of a mindset, and busyness is more of an action that you do. Yeah. So now to solve this, we're going to have to work on mindset and on actions. Does that make sense? So now over the past 7 days, we worked on mindset. What is taqwa? Okay, so taqwa is an awareness of Allah. How do we increase the awareness of Allah? Well, we have to increase our spiritual exercise. We have to try and improve the way that we pray our salah. We have to try and get in touch with the creation of Allah. So we spent some time looking at the sky and the trees and the things which Allah has created. We put a bit more attention on the food which Allah has created for us, and obviously our bodies as well and our breath. Yeah, so that's kind of spiritual exercises. And then we worked on a plan to get rid of the being busy aspect. So in terms of being busy, we end up doing lots of things. So instead of doing random things, we focused a lot on dua. This is over the past 3 days. We brought a lot of attention to how every dua that we make is meant to have. What's it meant to have? So we're meant to, spiritual action is doing dua, but it's also meant to have what? Every dua has to have? Who remembers, man? Yeah, good. So every dua should have an action point to it. So if you're making dua for something, you should also have an action which you're doing to make that dua materialize. So that's what we worked on. And then what we done to make that practical is we just applied those questions to different areas of taqwa which we were going through. And then on the first day, like you know, we focused primarily on water. So I want to come now to yesterday's slide and just see how that fits into what we've done so far. Is that okay with everyone? Yeah? Okay. So what we done is then we then during this point we went into taqwa a little bit deeper, and we gave taqwa we understood taqwa in 2 ways as well. Yeah. So number 1 was taqwa is an awareness of Allah, and number 2 is that this awareness of Allah, it gives you a control on your actions. Yeah, does everyone remember that as well? And I think that was quite important, because now taqwa, to work on our taqwa, we're going to work on 2 things. One is mindset and one is actions. Yeah, so we're not only going to actually make sure that we have a higher awareness of Allah and make sure we're praying, make sure we're getting in touch with Allah, but at the same time we're going to make sure that we're getting the actions in place to also develop that at the same time. And I think that was what really helped kind of bring that to life and actually make give us something to do all the time to actually work on our taqwa. So this was what we went through yesterday, and how, like, sometimes, because everyone here is going to be on this taqwa journey together, we're all going to be at different points. Yeah, some of us have been thinking about this for a long time. Some of us might be the first time. Some of us maybe just starting with this whole journey. So now when we start doing this, there's going to be this confusion area. So there's going to be like, yes, I've learned something about taqwa, but at the same time there's going to be a darkness kind of thing. There's going to be an area where we're not quite sure what's happening next. We're not quite sure where we're meant to be going. Yeah, which gives us a bit of a problem. That gives us lots of questions and lots of problems to solve. So what we've done to resolve that is that for our whole life we're going to be on this journey of kind of progressing forward and learning a bit more about our taqwa. There's always going to be things to learn, and we're always going to be in a state of curiosity to actually make sure we get there. And the simplest example is on the PowerPoint now, to understand this point. So if you look at the slide at the moment, just looking at the 3rd point there, which is the gap which we have, yeah, between the things that we know as information, the most common way of learning something in the physical world, and between what we've actually now come to believe based on our spiritual practices. For example, we know as information that Allah created us, but then there's always some kind of a gap between that information and how that shows up inside our life as an action point. Does that make sense? And that's what we work on. So we work on deepening that belief, deepening that taqwa, deepening our iman and deepening our trust in Allah. So now if you pray salah, you will connect to Allah in a way which you probably have never connected to Him outside of salah. So then you get that awareness of Allah. If you learn to make dua, you'll see Allah helping you in your life. So obviously as Muslims, we've all had our own experiences of how Allah kind of shows up in our life. And that's always powerful, to just bring that awareness of how does Allah help and how do we feel connected to Allah. So that's what I really wanted to do. So based on what we've come so far, has anyone got any questions based on these, the two obstacles, which is knowing and being busy, the two things which we focus on in taqwa, which is number one is the mindset, so not knowing and being aware of Allah, and also some action points as well. See, any questions about that? Sheikh Abid, do you want to share anything at the moment, man? It'd be nice to have some like deep input from yourself. Sorry, your mic's off at the moment, man. Oh, yes, you're here now. Alhamdulillah, I can hear you. Jazakallah, man. Jazakallah khair. Okay, man. Sure. So, then yesterday we came, now what we realized is that questions are quite important. Yeah, so the questions we ask are quite important. The questions you ask yourself and how we go forward from those questions is very, very important. So now we can ask disempowering questions or we can ask empowering questions. Yeah. So the default, which we realized yesterday, and this is, again, I've probably said this every day as well, that the world is quite messed up. Like, it's not a lovely, ideal world which we live in. But we as individuals have like such a unique way of contributing to that world. Yeah, we all have our own thing which is going on in your life, and we all have our own things which we're doing to make the world better. So those of you that are doctors and are NHS workers, you're all working in a certain way which contributes to the way that the world becomes better. And like yesterday, I think we went even deeper. Like, even people that stock the shelves in the supermarkets. Before the coronavirus, we might not have appreciated them very much at all. Probably have thought like, these, normal people or something. But now when we even go to the supermarket and we queue up, and sometimes we have to queue up to go inside, or even when you walk inside and you see that like there's people working there at the till, we have a different appreciation for those people now. And when we see stuff on the shelves and people working there stocking up the shelves, we have a different appreciation for the fact that they stock the shelves for us. Before, it was taken for granted that we can go to Tesco and buy whatever we want. But now suddenly, like, we realize that there's actually like effort which goes into it, and there's actually something which we need to appreciate. And it's not. And obviously, when like everyone went a bit crazy at the beginning and everything ran out in the shops, then we were like, wow, we never even realized how much of a blessing it was just to have a stocked up Tesco. So these kind of questions. Now, some people can go through this period of coronavirus and not notice that too much. But I think when you ask yourself these kind of questions, that why are we actually here as human beings? And keeping in mind the examples which we had yesterday, which is that we are all serving the world in some way. And sometimes we just think that, we go to work and, that is a work and we do it to get money and we need lots of money to live. And that becomes a bit of a boring way of living life. So instead of saying that, how can I pay my rent or pay my water bill or, feed my family, we can figure out how we can actually serve the people around us, how we can look after our family, how we can look after the world and give back to the world in some way. And also, as we know, that Allah created us for a very important purpose. He didn't create us for no reason. So if you ask yourself that question of why did Allah create you, that will give you that power of figuring it out and actually being able to use this. So on the slide now, just like we had yesterday, I left this there yesterday for a while, is an example of those empowering questions. Those of you that are doing the gratitude course on YouTube, the whole process is to take us from disempowering questions to empowering questions. Because the default, as we know, are these kind of questions. Yeah, so whenever we look around the world, whenever we have a discussion, naturally I think we are in a position where generally we're just asking questions which put us on the back foot, which put us into a victim state of mind. And we covered those kind of points yesterday. So we missed out a couple of slides yesterday, so I want to come to those slides and carry on a little bit. So I want to carry on from from this slide, which is where we left off yesterday. And this is an important part. So now we talk a lot about gratitude and asking the right questions and being aware of what you have. Being aware that Allah's with you, Allah's created you. Now this is to some extent the mindset. And being happy with what you have. Being content with what you have. That in itself is sometimes an aim for a lot of people. Like, can I just be content with what Allah's given me? Is that possible for me? And that's a good thing to aim for as well. But obviously this brings up the big question. The big question which comes up is that if we're just happy with what we have now and content with what we have now, then how do we strive towards the future? How do we build towards the future? And I think one of the most powerful things for that is dua. Because when we start making dua, we're kind of figuring out this plan which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for us. Isn't it? Because Allah created us and He's put us here and He's given you these gifts, and everyone has their own gifts. We all serve the world in different ways. So now this question of why He's created you, which gifts do you have, and how do you use these gifts to actually serve the world is what your dua brings about to some extent. Does that make sense to everyone? So now your dua, for example, it's going to force you to think that in 10 years, what am I going to be doing? How am I going to be operating so that I'm actually giving even more to the world, that I'm even contributing even more, that I'm able to serve the world around us better. And like we mentioned yesterday, that when we start connecting with Allah, we also, like that, we become connected to each other a bit more. Because we're able to see how, the fact that we're connected to Allah, Allah created me and helps me in a certain way. In the same way, He helps all the people around me. So everyone on this call, we all have our own relationship with Allah and we all see how He's helping us in His unique way. So then this dua, it allows you to connect to that bigger thing about your life. Does that make sense? So bringing these questions up, very often we have to actually allow the answer to come as well, to some extent. And this answer which we're going to get, when you ask this question, why did Allah create me, for example? Why am I here? What's the point of my life? All of these kind of things. Then we're going to start coming towards a vision which we have for our life. Like somewhere where we want to go, something which we actually want to do. Some plan which we have to actually become better and to be more than what we already have. So now when we are our default mode, which is very often to ask disempowering questions and to blame politicians, to blame Donald Trump, to blame the coronavirus, to blame the economy, and we blame other people and we're like, what's going wrong? Who can we blame? Yeah, that's very often a default thing. If instead of doing that, we start asking more empowering questions of like, what can I do? How can I solve this problem? And we start looking at the slide. Can everyone see the slide here? So the first point, we start discussing the solution more than we're discussing the problem. Yeah. Now, gratitude leads to that. So being happy with what you have at the moment brings attention to the solutions which you already have, the gifts that you already have. And once you start doing that enough, you'll start realizing how you as a being are contributing to the solution. Does that make sense? So now when you start thinking about the solution, you realize the solution is going to be like, you're going to have to think about it, you're going to have to make a plan for it. And when we start thinking about it more and more, we ask the question more and more that what is it that I'm meant to be doing? How am I meant to be helping? And one of the really powerful things about dua is that now you're asking Allah to help you. So Allah is going to help you in this, whatever it is you're trying to doing. So that makes sure that the thing that you're trying to do is actually worth doing. It's actually something which you should be doing. It's something which is worth pursuing. It's not just about you. It's not just about yourself. It's actually about something much bigger than you. So now you actually think about this plan a lot more. So now, one of the things when it comes to dua, when it comes to this vision which we're trying to create for ourselves, is to ask questions which actually lead us towards that direction, lead us towards the solution. So, for example, believing and understanding that everything happens for a reason. And this is actually really important, because if we hadn't had any problems in our life, if we hadn't struggled in our life, we wouldn't really have many solutions to offer either, because we wouldn't really know much. The only reason you're useful is because of the amount that you've grown from the day that you were born. If from the day that you were born you said, yeah, everything's fine, this is all good, I'm just gonna, sit here and do nothing, and when suddenly it came time to learning to walk, you were like, nah, I don't need to do that. I don't need to grow. I just need to stay the way I am. Then none of us would have learned to walk. We'd have just, stayed the way that we are. But it's because we chose to grow and get through the problem of not knowing how to walk. So when you first stood up as a baby and tried to walk, you probably fell over. And you've probably done that many hundreds of times. But if we thought that, oh, no, I can't walk, like this is hard. This growth, this is too much for me to grow through. I can't go through this growth period of my life where I actually learn to walk. I'm just gonna give up here. Then we would, and the same thing. Whenever a problem hits us, like as babies, we're actually sometimes more clever, more in touch with our fitrah than we are as adults. So as a baby, we know that life's about growing and learning. So you learn and grow. And when we become adults, we think that a problem comes, and now, this problem has come, I have to do this hard work and solve the problem, rather than realizing that that is exactly what we need. Like everything that happened in our life, it happened to allow you to actually grow in the way that you need, so that you can actually be the person that you need to be. I hope that made sense, by the way. Or was that just confusing? Does that make sense for people? Gee, I'm gonna pause it a little bit, man. This is going too quickly in our time, man. Gee, just that point there, that everything happens for a reason, and Allah also made it happen. Like especially with the coronavirus, like Allah created this virus which came and affected the world, and then we all went into lockdown, and we all went into itikaf for like 3 months to reconnect with Allah and sort our lives out. There's a lot of important reasons behind the things which Allah does, and like one of the things, just looking at the last point which is there, and this is just to summarize very quickly of what we did yesterday as well, because we obviously have a plan as well. Yeah, and this is just that little exercise we did where we ask, what do you want? And we all, and if I ask you, let me just do the exercise quickly. So if I ask you, what do you want? Yeah, you guys probably are like, yes, I want X, Y, and Z. So some of us, we probably already got our plan of things which we want. But then now we have our plan of what we want, and then there's Allah's plan as well. Yeah. Now, sometimes we think that we want a certain thing, so now we start walking towards this thing that we want. And then also we make dua that Allah gets us towards that thing. Now, the problem is when we make plans and try and do things, very often our plans aren't always actually that good. And Allah's plan is actually much better. So we say that I'm going to go in a straight line towards what I want. And one of the fundamental problems obviously is probably that we don't know what we want. Maybe you want something which isn't even good for you, which causes a big problem. Like if you think you want something and actually you don't, because you haven't thought about it enough, then you're going to be pushing in this. You're going to be like, I want this thing, I want this thing, I want this thing, and you're going to make dua, I want this thing, and then Allah's not going to give it to you, and you're going to get angry, I didn't get this thing. But like, you've got to realize that the plan which Allah has made is a lot more integrate. It's a lot more deep than the plan which you make, and to be honest, it's a lot better than the plan which you make. And the plan which Allah makes may involve some kind of pain. You might have to grow in a certain way. He might like come and like you might feel like you're getting hit in a certain way, and by going through that pain, you become the person who can actually have the thing which you want, which you need. And that's something which is very important to understand. So when we went through that, we went into our dua again. Yeah, because once we do our gratitude, we realize where we are. We realize how we need to grow. And we start getting these points. So now we're trying to go in a certain direction. Yeah, and we've asked these questions. So we've asked, what do I want? Where do I want to go? And we ask our spirit these questions. And hopefully after doing a bit of introspection, and like I said to, I think Kaz is not here today. But like we said, that this asking this question can be a process. Like it may take several days, several months to figure out the actual direction which you're meant to be going in. And some of us, will do that early, some of us will do that later. But then, when we start going in the right direction, we're gonna have some kind of a plan. We're gonna have to get some action points to get there. So that's where du'a becomes very, very powerful. So now we've asked ourselves where we're going. We've spoken to our spirit a little bit. You know, where does that want to go? And some of the most important things is to be connected with Allah, to actually be in touch with our spirit, to be growing is one of the most important things which we want to be doing. And now we're going to ask Allah to get us there. And I think one thing which helps answer this is actually the story which Ian mentioned yesterday, which helps us appreciate that very often the answers to our questions are already in our life. But by asking the question, you notice the answer. And for those of you that don't remember, I'm going to do that again. I think that was a good. Ian, what was the thing that you said yesterday? I've forgotten what it was, man. No, man. How the question? It was an answer to a question. I can't remember what the question was. Oh, how Allah helps. I think it was how Allah helped you, or you know the Morocco story about the first thing you asked was about Allah as opposed to anything else. Okay. Yeah, mashallah. So obviously being in a holiday in Morocco, usually you don't go around asking, you know, you need to kind of get back to your hotel, you need to get to the beach, you need to, you know, find a off license or whatever. You need to find things around you. So those are the normal things to ask, but sometimes so these kind of things, they will happen for all of us on a different level. We'll all have it in different ways. Things will happen. Allah will show us things. Allah will help us in different ways. And if we're not actually looking for these answers, if you're not looking for the guidance from Allah, then we're not gonna be able to see it. We're not gonna be able to notice it. So I think that's why. Oh, sorry, man. The slide was never changing. You know. Can you guys see the slide? I think the slide's wrong. You know. 1 minute. Let me share that again. Oh. Let me sort that out, man. Yeah, Anand told me. But then... okay, that's not very good, is it? Okay, that should be better, man. Sorry, man, I was on this one. So you guys are not looking. So you went through all of this. Okay, anyway. So we went through that. Anyway, man. So what were we talking about? Gee, there's only 15 minutes left, man. Okay, let me read Salman's question. Is there any such thing as luck in Islam? Such as we believe everything happens for a reason. Then surely nothing can happen just by chance in that case. Yeah, exactly, nothing. So who said stuff happens by chance? I think, yeah, that's a good question, man. So we have like some hadith where the Prophet ﷺ kind of encourages, what's the word, man? Tafa'ul, isn't it? Sheikh Abid. Where the Prophet ﷺ, like, he encourages noticing the good that happens. But this very often, this exercise of noticing the good coincidences which happen, or the things which kind of help you on your journey, I think the Prophet ﷺ in these narrations, he tries to open our eyes to these things which push you in the right direction. Does that make sense? Yeah. Tafa'ul, yeah. Tafa'ul is... so I think tafa'ul... Yeah, but very often when we're studying the hadith, we kind of... The title of that section is kind of luck, isn't it? Or good... I guess good fortune. Yeah, tafa'ul. Thank you. So when we do tafa'ul, again, that is just an exercise of noticing what goes good, what goes right. In fact, when the Prophet ﷺ talks about it, he says that Like even when people used to become Muslims and they used to have like funny names which weren't very good, he used to change their name, and he used to say that you should change the name because this is, he's, like if your name is a sinner, or your name is the worshipper of an idol or something, then it's not very good. It doesn't help your fortune. So I think what helps your fortune is actually noticing when Allah is helping you, what's going right. And I think what we've done throughout Ramadan is not actually been like trying to get new information or trying to always learn new things, but just sitting down for a little while, and just going back through the moments in our life where our taqwa has gone up, or where we've noticed Allah's plan kind of coming together. And I think the more we do that, that is what gets us more in touch with our spirit a little bit, I think. Is there any questions before we move on? Yeah, come on, man. There should be some questions, man, before we move on. Is there any questions? Or any comments before we move to the next bit? No questions. Okay, man. So where are we now on the slide? Okay, no questions. Okay, the only thing which is left then to discuss today, because I wanted to do a good implementation before we move on. The other thing which we did, in terms of, one is to build this awareness. So this taqwa kind of develops. We have this mindset that we are connected to Allah. Allah's created us for a reason. Everything's kind of like sorted out, which is great. But the other thing that does is give us some kind of action points to take. Like, so instead of just being an accident, like you're not on earth by accident. There's a very important purpose behind your existence. So that's the other kind of point which comes up, which means that you can't just just be chilling all the time and doing nothing. So now what's important is to have that vision for the future as well. Yeah. And I think the most powerful tool which we have for that is dua and our supplication. So now instead of you kind of because obviously we believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already predestined everything. Like there's not even that much complexity to what's going to happen. Allah's already decided it. So we're not trusting ourselves, we're trusting Allah's plan. Yeah. So dua to some extent allows us to re-believe in Allah's plan. So you're not creating your life yourself, but when you're doing dua, you're almost co-creating your life with Allah. And you're kind of the one who created your life and created you and created everything around you. He's the one who's decided what's happening in your life. And when you're doing dua, you're getting more in touch with how that's going to show up. Does that make sense to people? So now the reason it's important for our du'as to have an action is so that our du'as are actually in touch with where we are today. So when we do gratitude, we then become aware of what's going on at the moment. How are we affecting the world at the moment? So if somebody's a taxi driver, at the moment they're taking the person who's lost in the countryside to their safe place. Yeah, they're solving that problem. If somebody's working in Tesco, they're making food available for the people who need it every day. Somebody's a doctor, he's saving lives, a bit more obviously. But I think with the coronavirus, that this whole money thing, this whole obsession with chasing just money, we lose that a bit, and we realize that people exist to serve humanity, and we exist to serve the world because we're in touch with Allah. So now what we'd want to do is, once we're aware of what we're doing at the moment, we obviously want to take that to the next level. Yeah, we want to take your service also to the next level, because you exist in the world for a very, very important reason. So how you're going to serve the world needs to get better as well. Now that needs specific qualities. So let me just check you guys can see. Yes, so this slide's good. The slide you've got at the moment. So now imagine you've got a certain deficiency which you have. Yeah, so there's something which you can't quite do. Maybe like you're stuck in the way that you serve the world. So you're trying to get a promotion, you're trying to scale your business, you're trying to, okay, let's take it to personal life. Maybe you're trying to get a six-pack. Maybe you're trying to lose some weight. Maybe you're trying to sort your sleep out. Whatever you're trying to improve, there's something which you're trying to develop and trying to take to the next level. And there's a skill which you're going to have to develop in all of these cases, isn't there? If you want to have a better relationship with your wife, there's certain skills which you're going to have to develop. You might have to be more patient. You might have to be more loving. You might have to be more compassionate. You might have to be able to control your anger a bit more. Certain skills. Now, that's the skill set which you can make dua for. So your vision for your future is who you actually become. Does that make sense? Rather than saying, "Oh Allah, like make my wife like really obedient," or if some of the sisters, we've got sisters here as well, man. Sometimes I'm a bit sexist, aren't I? So the sisters might be thinking the same about their husbands. That why can't the husbands be a bit more like nice and gentle and useful and all this kind of stuff. So we want change sometimes in our relationship. But dua helps you co-create your life. So you're going to now bring attention towards how you need to grow for that growth to happen, for that change to happen. So if you want like a loving, forever lasting relationship, we're going to have to obviously grow in some way. We're going to have to develop our patience. Now the Prophet ﷺ has given us a lot of advice on how to develop your patience. You're going to have to develop your gratitude. You're going to have to develop your taqwa. You're going to have to develop the strength of your belief in Allah. To some extent, you have to develop your focus. So how do you start working on these things? Now, okay, so we're going to work on our focus, let's say, so that when we pray, we're actually there rather than somewhere else. You're going to have to focus on your concentration. So you might have to figure out a plan that if at the moment, as soon as I start praying, my attention kind of goes to the past and the future, I'm going to do something which I'm going to get a plan together, which means that now by the end of Ramadan, I'll actually keep my concentration from the time I say Allahu Akbar to the end of Surah Fatiha. Maybe you'll work on the way you recite Surah Fatiha. Maybe you work on the way you say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. So that even while you're in ruku, you keep that concentration. So that focus goes up. So that's why this... sorry man, I want to try and bring this back to where we started. So we started from the two problems, which is knowing and being busy. So I would say some Muslims just be busy when they pray, rather than realizing that this is a time where I have like one-to-one time with Allah, where I'm meant to be connecting to Allah and developing my taqwa. So instead of thinking that just something you do, you actually think this is something which changes my life. And now when you start doing that enough, and then one of the things which help you change that mindset is making dua for it. So one of the most primary things we make dua for is so that we can actually be connected with Allah. And the action point for being more connected to Allah, well, obviously in Ramadan, it will be fasting, it will be praying salah, it will be having patience and not like getting angry with the people around us, all of these things. But by going in this process of first being aware of where you are, first asking the questions, where's my taqwa, where am I at the moment, and realizing quite directly, what do you need to change to get to where you need to be, that gives us the action point. Is that budgeting with everyone? Everyone got that? So that's where we come to this action point. So now instead of our dua being abstract and kind of like pie in the sky, our dua becomes something which you're doing every day. Your dua becomes for that salah which you pray every day. Your dua becomes for the dua which you're making every day. Your dua becomes for the way that you speak in your relationship every day. For the energy that you have. If you need more energy, for example, you might have to sort your health out. So you can make dua for your health being better, for the food that you eat being better, for the excuse me, you're gonna have to move back. For this making sure that you actually sleep on time. So I hope that helps, man. So that would, because I wanted to use today to because I know there's been a lot of questions. I've got a couple of phone calls today as well, man, and a lot of people have been like a bit all over the place. So what I wanted to do today is, rather than really go deeper into a new topic or into something new, I wanted to really go and implement just on a brief level, so we can remember the two problems. Yeah, one of the biggest problems is knowing, and that's the first problem, knowing, because we think we know everything. And the answer to that, the solution for knowing, is these questions. Yeah, the MIQ for taqwa. the empowering questions, which we've done today, asking the right question, asking what's going right. And then once we do that, we then come on to actually our schedule, the action points. And the most powerful thing to work on our action points is to do dua, so that we realize we're co-creating our change and our growth and our life with Allah and the world around us with Allah. And then when you realize that, this is not an accident, you're not here by mistake, Allah created you and the world around you, then you can just very easily notice what those next steps are, which need to be taken to improve our connection with Allah, to improve our life, ourselves, and to improve even the service and the way that we help the world around us. Is that okay with everyone? Anyway, man, we're drawing close to the time. We're actually running ahead of time today. Alhamdulillah. It's 7 o'clock, man. We're not running ahead of time at all. It's time to end. But sorry, Sheikh Abid was here, man, and I'm really glad he came. And I was hoping that he'd enlighten us so much more as well, man. I really like it because I like to get all the scholars involved as well in our events. So I've asked all of them to kind of pop in from time to time, but I don't want to put pressure on them either, because Sheikh Ashraf, for example, is doing his own class. Sheikh Ismail is doing his own class. Imam Bashir came the other day. Those of you probably saw him. So I do try and keep them to keep coming. But alhamdulillah, man, it's really good to have the shuyukh as well among us. But it'd be nice if maybe you concluded with some, I don't know, man, some inspirational words, and then we could end this lesson, inshallah. What do you think, Sheikh? Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Yeah, man. Jazakallah, man. But that point, just because also we have calamities come as well. But I think to some extent, in hindsight, when we look back at our calamities, sometimes they are the things which made us grow the most. They're often the things which bring you the closest to Allah. So I think that was really deep, man. MashaAllah, Jazakallah for that, man. That was a nice summary. And yeah, man, I think it's just going deeper on the simple things sometimes, which allow us to appreciate. Ramadan is not always that complex. It's not always different things, but it's just getting in touch with ourselves and trusting us. That autonomy thing is quite important, which I mentioned, which is if Allah's there for you, and Allah, for example, this is really important actually, because it's not about me so much. It's not about even Sheikh Abid or coming to this specific class. Once you realize this, what you'd realize is actually about you and Allah, which is really powerful, because then you're not dependent. And this is the beautiful thing about Islam, that every one of our worships, it doesn't require an intermediary. You don't need to go to a shirk, and this is why shirk is so looked down upon. That when people started worshipping the prophets and the idols and the statues, because you're kind of underestimating Allah in every one of those situations. If you think you needed someone to help you in this, Allah's always there to solve the problems, man. Anyway, man. Jazakallah, man. Jazakallah, Sheikh Hamid. I think you're really inspired. I think your presence brought a lot of spirituality today. And all of you, man. All of you here. Ah, Abdul Hafiz has arrived as well. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum. Let me just annoy everyone and say hello to everyone. Uh, who joined? Who's Ab? Oh, alaikum assalam, Abdul Hafiz, man. Who's Ab? No worries, man. No worries. Who's Abu Bakr's iPad? Who's Abu Bakr? Sorry, man. It would be nice to know who Abu. Which one, man? Do I know you? Oh, okay. So I do know you then. MashaAllah. Oh, MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Nice to have you, Abu Bakr, man. Very nice to meet you, man. Jazakallah, man. Okay, good to have you here, man. How did you find the class? Oh, Jazakallah khair, man. It's nice to have you, man. Nice to have everyone, man. Jazakallah khair. We'll see you all tomorrow, inshallah, at 6 o'clock. And, man, nice to have you all here, man. Inshallah. Barakallahu fiqh. Barakallahu fiqh. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah, man. Wa alaikum assalam. Wa alaikum assalam. Wa alaikum assalam, Ashfar. Very good to have you as well, man. Nice to have you. I think Ashr's been very consistent.